hello to everyone. Very warm welcome to the online workshop on natural disasters / hazards. Perhaps we'll talk about in this workshop what is the right term to use. But anyhow, very welcome to all who have managed to join. My name is Zentis Harmasons. I am the project expert at ESPON EGTC. And today's workshop is based on the research results of the ESPON Titan project, which has been recently finalized. Perhaps you haven't seen the reports yet published on ESPON website, but they're coming shortly. So this is also in line with the theme of the ESPON week. So we'll make some connections there as well. I'm going to admit participants as they come, but I think we can go on and start with the presentations and the short context information. So I'll pass over to Efren, who is going to give information on how this workshop is going to be conducted and what to expect. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Zentis. Even though we are starting a bit late, we will try to finish on time, so we avoid this overlap with other sessions of the ESPON week. As Zentis was saying, we are going to talk about outputs of one of the ESPON projects, the ESPON Titan, which is about understanding and analyzing territorial patterns of the economic impacts of natural hazards, but also the project addressed other issues related to territorial vulnerability, as well as policies for disaster risk management, climate adaptation, and their integration into spatial planning. The session today is going to have 4 presentations, and I will present them in order of appearance. First, we will count with Carolina Cantergiani from Tecnalia, from the team of the ESPON Titan project. Well, she's been coordinating the work, as a matter of fact, and she'll be giving main highlights of the project outcomes, specifically related to policy recommendations. We will have Tiberiu Antofi from JRC and the Disaster Risk Knowledge Center. We will have Blanca Bartol from Slovenia and member of the ESPON Monitoring Committee. And we will have Francisco Cobos from the Andalusian regional government, and specifically related to climate change adaptation. The presentations after Carolina are going to be framing a little bit the issue from the respective policy arenas at European level, national and also regional level, but also they are complementary not only in terms of the scale, the administrative scale, but also from the field of action. Because in the case of Tiberiu, he's working specifically in disaster risk management. Francisco is working in climate-related issues and climate-related risks, therefore. And Blanca, with a complementary view, is working in territorial policies and territorial issues. So, as I was saying, not only complementarity in terms of scales, but also in terms of policies, and therefore we hope that those 3 presentations could provide complementary points of view to the project outputs, and also have a fruitful discussion and cross-fertilization. The intention could be that after the presentations, which originally intended to be 15 minutes, but if we can have it shorter, we will have more time for discussion and debate after the presentation. But taking into account that the timing now, well, at least we will have finally 15, 20 minutes for discussion and reactions across the different interventions. Well, that would be all as an introduction. Carolina, the floor is yours, please.
Hello, everybody. While I open my screen here, I just wanted to say thank you. That it's very nice to see in an ESPON week again, and unfortunately this format, but hopefully we can see each other face to face in very soon. You can see my screen, right? If you don't, just let me know. So we are talking about ESPON Titan, as have been mentioned. And just as an introduction, I have so many things to say, but I'll be really fast at the beginning. I'm presenting the scientific findings. But you can find everything, as Zintis has mentioned. The report will be available soon in the webpage. So if you miss any detail of the presentation, I imagine it will be available as well. So you can always contact us in case there is any doubt. So these are some keywords that are related to our projects that you hear about: spatial planning, disaster risk management policies, territorial, European policies, evidences. So this is something that we are presenting in our project. These are the keywords. And just let me leave it here. Just to mention what Zintis has anticipate a little bit the term natural hazard and disaster. The formal title of the project is Territorial Impacts of Natural Disasters, although we are conscious that this term natural disaster is no longer used. You will hear us talking either on natural hazards or disasters, because in the scientific community, they consider the term natural disasters erroneous, because it's actually, disasters are not natural. What are natural hazards? And disasters, according to the impacts and the deaths and the damage that this natural hazards causes, it can be converted into a disaster. So there are lots of material on that. So we have mentioned some here, but just for you to know that we are talking about territorial impacts of natural hazards here. Good. Okay, if I can. Okay, so just to give a brief idea of what the project is about, we are leading this project from Technalia, but we also have other 4 partners into it: the GTK from Finland, the Technical University of Dortmund, the Trinomics in the Netherlands, and the Cambridge Econometrics from the UK, each of us with a specific expertise and contribution to this project. We have analyzed 4+1 disasters, or hazards in this case. It's the river floods, the windstorm, earthquakes, and droughts. They're at the center of the Titan. But we have added also landslide, because one of our case studies had it as the main natural hazard to be analyzed. So as we had information at European level, we decided to include in the spatial distribution in the project. So the first block is just spatializing, is representing spatially the natural hazards as well as the economic impacts. The economic impacts, we have done two kinds of analysis, one at global level for the whole Europe, and local level using 2 test regions that will be showed a little bit later. And we have analyzed both direct economic impacts as well as indirect economic impacts. Just to mention, the indirect ones is novel. It's novelty because at European level it has not done very often, and we have used the modeling to do so. So it's something that is really an added value for this project. Well, after that, we have analyzed the territorial patterns, and we have interpreted them based on as well on the territorial vulnerability. And the third block, we have done an exhaustive analysis on the disaster risk management and climate change adaptation strategies in Europe, identifying some good practices, and based also on our case studies that gave us some cross-border information in case of Alpine region as well. And these we have compared with the territorial planning, the existing territorial planning, how they are integrated and into the territorial planning. And just because we consider that to decrease the economic impacts, the impacts in general of the natural hazards, we have to do it through spatial planning. We have either to decrease exposure or to decrease sensitivity or to increase coping capacity. And because of that, we have to know what is the vulnerability of the territory so that we'll be able to minimize the impacts through them. But I'm going a little bit deeper further. Very, very fast, I would like to present the scientific findings, what we have produced in the first part of this, before going into the policy recommendation. That is the goal of this discussion today. We have analyzed the 5 natural hazards, we have distributed them spatially, we have interpreted them individually, and we have also created an aggregated hazards. As you can see, for each of them, we have different interpretation. And as you can see, we have presented them in NUTS3 scale. But for droughts, we didn't have that information. So only for these natural hazards that we had to use the NUTS0. So it's represented by country. And we have created an aggregated map using to distribute them in the territory. We use the cumulative damage cost for that. That is presented on the right. The key messages. What is presented there does not respect the flood measures in place, the protection measures, and so that if we consider the risk, this map would be a little bit different. So that this is not considering the measures in the representation, the distribution. The drought, since we have it in at 0, it's kind of a limitation to this. It may the interpretation must take this into consideration. And just to mention that the distribution does not count for human fatalities, so because it's not considered for the monetary value distribution, so that it would be a little bit different if we had considered it as well. In terms of economic impact analysis, we've used some modeling. We have done a qualitative analysis through impact pathway, and then we have created, based on the existing damage costs, the damage distribution matrices per hazard, and have distributed it into NUTS3 and across 5 capital stocks. With those information, we got the direct economic impacts, and we put them in a model called multi-regional input-output model, and we did an analysis so that we could see what are the indirect impacts of these hazards, individually and aggregated. Just to mention that the direct impacts are the ones induced by direct damage to the capital stock, while the indirect is induced by the disruption of the economic activity in not only neighbor, but linked regions. Right, for both of these exercises, we use publicly available sources, and this is we have done the same analysis from the natural hazards, aggregating all the individual ones in one map. I'm not going into detail on the analysis of this map because it's not the goal of the meeting today, but I would like just to mention the main key message here, that the results are aligned and coherent with other studies, such as PESETA 4 report. We have not considered, and very important, we have not considered for the indirect impacts, the interruption of critical infrastructure. So these such as harbor, airport, bridges, etc. So the real potential indirect losses could be even higher than what is presented here if it was considered. Besides, we have done an analysis year by year in terms of natural and direct and indirect impacts. So we were surprised to see that is in the proportion of 40% to 60%. We thought that direct hazard will be much higher, and it's not. We have a very, very important indirect higher impacts represented along these years. Again, we have done the same analysis, but instead of direct, indirect by hazard. And we can see that floods and windstorms, actually winds, floods covers like 50% of the impacts analyzed, while the windstorm around 30%, and the other one with minor proportion. We can see in this graph that the orange one represents earthquakes. Since it's not very frequent, it's not very visualized here, but when it happens, it has enormous economic impacts, as expected. For the vulnerability assessment, of course, we have not came to this conclusion. We just confirmed that vulnerability matters. Why? Because it helps us to understand why the curse of a natural hazard can be transformed into a disaster. So this is the scheme, how we understand the vulnerability. It's part of the risk, one of the components of risk, together with the hazards and the exposure. And it's the components, the main components of those are susceptibility and coping capacity of the territory. So we have analyzed some indicators, in specifically 8 for susceptibility and 17 for coping capacity, that is listed there. And we have distributed each one spatially, and have used the principal component analysis to create the final vulnerability map. Besides this, we have analyzed the population living in territories that are classified as high or very high vulnerability, with high, very high vulnerability, and we have seen that 22% of the population are living in those regions. A key message that decreasing vulnerability of the territory may help to reduce economic impacts of natural hazards. We have a mistake there. In terms of policy instruments, we have done an exhaustive analysis of the policy instruments in terms of disaster risk management and climate change adaptation in Europe. And we have realized that the practices are still far from fulfilling the requirements for an effective spatial and risk-oriented management approach, but there are some initiatives and some good practices there. We have used a multi-methodological approach, using desktop analysis, but also based on what we got from our case studies. And we have, as mentioned, we have identified some very good practices that will be shared in a moment. And we have used the case studies as a base for confirm some findings that we got at European level. So the two main results of this task in the project are two tables that are cover all the countries and by hazard. One of them is on disaster risk management and climate change adaptation practices, while the other is on the role of spatial planning for each of the countries. And we have investigated 8 case studies. They are evenly distributed. They have specific different heterogeneous institution governance settings, and they are representative cases in Europe in these terms. The goal is to illustrate the findings that we got from our European analysis, and to contribute, of course, to the generation of policy recommendations. These on the right are the ones that are chosen: the Po River Basin, the Rotterdam City, Alpine region, Dresden region, Andalusia, city of Pori, the Nouvelle Aquitaine, and Prague. 2 of them are represented here by our speakers, the Francisco from Andalusia and Blanca from the Alpine region. And 2 of them are highlighted there. Nouvelle Aquitaine and Prague is underlined because they were the 2 that received specific local economic impacts analysis. The modeling and all the sequence that we did for Europe, we just downloaded the scale and downscaled and did it for these two case studies. The lessons learned in good practice, I'd like to focus here because the next part is already the policy recommendation, but these are part of the policy recommendation because they are the messages that we got, the main message is summarized here, of course, but the main message that we got from the case studies as good practice and lessons learned that we would like our speakers to react on, and also that are considered partially as an inspiration for the policy recommendation. So, of course, Territorial should focus more on more risk prevention activities rather than responsible reaction, and our numbers said that the impacts are really important. So if we have preventive measures, it may it's worth it. Actually, the cost is relevant, but it's worth it. The risk cannot be avoided nor reduced to zero, but it can be managed. Better or worse, but we have some very good initiatives here about the risk management. New methodologies could be implemented for risk assessment, and for example, the analysis based on scenarios. Instead of probability of occurrence. The importance of binding laws, regulation every aspect of DRM, the prevention, maintenance, update, etc. That the regional and national level should offer the local level financial support, guidelines, and knowledge. It happens the same at European level, so all the hierarchy levels would follow more or less these good practice. Vertical coordination and cooperation major for disaster risk management and climate change adaptation, as well as intersector coordination. It's related that this strategy should involve all the relevant actors, professionals, universities, enterprises, etc. And the supranational level should set common standards. In our case, we have seen that the flood EU directive and the water directive works very well as a higher reference from all the countries and all the case studies that we have interviewed. So we come to the heart of this presentation, that is the policy messenger recommendation. We have organized them in 3 blocks, even though there are 6 main topics addressed, and they address different parts of the policy processes. Besides those, we have added a recommendation as well based on the case studies experience that have just been presented. So just going through them, because I think it's important to mention here, since the reactions of our next speakers will be based on those. The first block on economic impacts is the methodologies for calculating economic costs and impacts for natural hazards. And we highlight here the importance of harmonization of the concepts and methods for risk assessment and risk evaluation. The other 5, in terms of indirect losses and the creation of damage function, the consideration of spatial and temporal dimension of risk, the consideration of criticality, and the more research and cooperation projects are presented in our reports as methodological ones, and that could be just like it would be important for future research on these issues. The second part is improved data availability on economic losses from natural hazards at local and regional level. We highlight here that the development of a framework for the collection of the necessary data is important at the local level across member states and authorities, although we know that there is an initiative there and there is some try. We think it should be better organized in the sense that we have it the collection could be developed better. So the other one is about the information itself that could be more granular and include the distinction between direct and indirect. Direct is very, very direct, as the name say, but the indirect is, we have seen that it's not very common to find indirect damage calculated and considered in the planning. The second block, they show the link in measures of economic losses with the development of the disaster risk management and climate change adaptation, and it should account for the total economic impacts considered direct and indirect. I've just mentioned that. And this is the key one, but we also consider the spatial-oriented risk assessment and management and the consideration of critical infrastructure in the evaluation of risk. This is key, and it's not very common to find it. The last 2 parts is one of them is the mobilizing European funding mechanisms. So we recommend that it could focus in a proactive and prevention-oriented design of the European funding instruments in combination with quality objective regarding funding of reconstruction. All of these, well, let's go to the last two ones, and I mentioned that. The terms of cooperation and coordination that we have seen in both level, European level and all levels until the case study levels, that for some of them we have very local case studies that also face the same limitation, is develop the cooperation structure between regions, cities, and local government. And of course, it would be interesting to establish a clear coordination between structure to provide it with leadership qualities. And the last one is the integration of both DRM and CCA, disaster risk management and climate adaptation, into legislative framework. Main one, again, is support those issues during the amendment process of EU directives, since they are very important for the development of these strategies at other levels, and the mainstream the climate change adaptation in the territorial development policies. As I was mentioning, all of those have specific session in our report, specific recommendation, more detailed explanation if you're interested to go into it. And this is a summary of all of them. So you can find the report. And before finish, I just would like to mention that all the analysis that we have done and all the findings that we achieved in this project help us or may support the policy the policies also at local level. So in this case, we have a spin-off in Portugal that we call support, but that would just to mention that is still ongoing. We are in the test 2 and 3 in the mid of it. It's finished in December, and it's on the strategic planning framework for the wildfires. So this follows the same logic of the Titan, although with a little bit more different context and very much local analysis. So just to mention that this also supports some local policy making as well. And that's it, what I wanted to tell. If there is any question, any issue, I think that all these will come back when the other speakers present, but I hope to have given a hint of what we have done. And hope to have opportunity to explain more in detail everything that we have done in terms of the scientific findings in the project. That's it from my side.
Thank you very much. You have finished sharp, and it's on top of the expected time, so we are on time. Okay, after this presentation, we will have this reaction from different scales, as I was saying. Tiberio, in your case, European scene with this perspective of disaster risk management, and also reactions to this framework of policy recommendations that Carolina was presenting. The floor is yours. Thank you. You're muted, Tiberio, sorry.
Okay, now I'm unmuted. Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Tiberio Antofi. I'm at GRC in Disaster Risk Management Knowledge Center. And with this activity that I'm presenting today, which is the Risk Data Hub, I'm trying to connect some of the remarks and recommendations that Carolina made earlier, because what the Risk Data Hub is doing is actually trying to link the global aspect of policies with the local scale of let's say drivers of risk, or and this is really difficult because we are hosting on the Risk Data Hub data, data that it's dedicated to disaster risks and disaster losses. And of course, when you talk about disasters, you talk about a lot of policies, agreements, Paris Agreement, frameworks, and mechanism, UCPM, strategies, climate change adaptation strategies. And we talk about various actions, prevention, preparedness, recovery. We talk about different hazards that each of these policies addresses, various multi-hazard actually. We talk about scales, local, regional, European, and we talk about sectors. So different economic sector. So what we do with the Risk Data Hub is to answer to all of these variation, let's say like this, in order to present accurate and relevant information that can lead to disaster risk reduction or can lead to increase in climate change. So I've just named now two of the approaches we have, which is the short-term disaster risk reduction, which aims of reducing vulnerability, and the long-term disaster risk management, let's say like this, which is the adaptations to climate change, which aims on increase institutions, EU services, universities, research institutions, national and European. And they all form together a collaborative approach in order to tackle this make sense, be coherent. This slide is about this. Then I will go and tell you that disaster risk data in the Risk Data Hub is structured in four, let's say, corners. We have a risk analysis place where we have the disaster risk data on exposure, vulnerability risk. We have a disaster loss data module where we focus on past events, losses, and damages. We have the scientific input in this kind of effort now, which is the research results which needs to be accepted and included in policy formulations. And we have also a user corner where hopefully, and we are believing in this, we are going to help national institutions to manage their own data on disaster risk. So these four types of data we structured on the Risk Data Hub, again, trying to link to all these policies and all these actions, if you want. In the risk, and now with these examples, I'm trying to link with whatever with the recommendations and Carolina said before, right? In the risk model, we actually focus on components of risk: exposure, vulnerability, and risk. We try to say what could be lost, where, and due to what. Exposure and vulnerability actually are the drivers of risk, and they are the most important drivers of risk because they are the ones that can be easily managed. You can mitigate the hazard. It's going to take a lot of time to mitigate it, but exposure and vulnerability, it's the two components of risk that can immediately lead to disaster risk reduction. So with the exposure, we try to identify the causal factors of disaster, the information or exposure to the local level. We are using in this module European-wide data sets. We are not using national data, but still. The resolutions and their scientific value help helped us in linking this information at the local level. What we are doing at the local level, we are trying to quantify, we are trying to measure what is exposed. We are trying to measure what is exposed to multiple hazard. We are trying to measure what is exposed by different sectors. This is really important because, as I was saying, we link to the causal factors, but we also link to locations where financial schemes should be applied. The exposure is seen as the maximum potential, that can be impacted in some regions, in some countries, in some, because we are going with the information up to that. This part of the model, the risk analysis model called exposure, can be also used as a standalone information or can be used in relation with vulnerability to arrive to a risk. And we have some examples of how this data was used on its own. We have some users that actually residential buildings, for example, across exposed buildings across exposures, their investments, their mortgages, for example. That was the information we provided them to, and they use this to disaggregate their and arrive to tackle their needs, actually. That was just one example. Another, as I was saying, this information can be used jointly with the vulnerability to arrive to a risk assessment. I mean, impact with the probability, actually. The vulnerability in our model, it has two sides. It has a side which is the hazard independent, and this is more or less the part of the resilience. We just characterize the region, city, a country through its economic, social, as a dependent, hazard-dependent part. We try to link of hazards with characteristics or attributes of exposure, because in our concept, vulnerability it's based on the attributes of the exposure, based on attributes of buildings, attributes of economic sectors, attributes of system, whatever you want. And we are building this vulnerability indicator by merging these two components together. So far, actually, we are only at this part here, hazard independent. We are working on hazard dependent because it's a bit more difficult and it's ongoing work right now. Of course, we go across scale, we arrive to NAT3. So even here, we try to link to that community level, even if we cannot because of the data shortage. This is the part where maybe a community can be described, while the country level, this is the part where the type of government can be described. On the vulnerability, again, it's the causal factors. Once we know how vulnerable we are and what are the causes of our vulnerability, we can manage it and can arrive to the risk reduction. Of course, it's the resilience, which is the goal of the strategies for climate change adaptation. It's highly correlated with vulnerability. It's highly correlated, but negatively correlated with vulnerability. We try to get them both in this kind of indicator and then separate it according to the needs and the use of the users. It's a multi-asset vulnerability, so we are going to say buildings, they are vulnerable that much in that region, or it's a multi-scale, as I was saying, it's a multi-hazard. That building is vulnerable to flood, that residential buildings in this region is vulnerable to earthquake in this way. And then we arrive to risk. The risk in our is a potential impact. It's an impact, actually, calculated impact, which is has a probability. That's the risk for us. And we have also a temporal deep dimension attached to that risk. So what we are doing is to arrive to this risk matrix where we put the intensity of the impact against the probability of that impact to appear. Of course, we have a multi-hazard platform, so we had to align and homogenize the way we treat the data for different hazards in order to arrive to a comparable analysis which is represented in this risk matrix. So what we are presenting here actually is say that the intensity of a certain impact can be equaled or exceeded with a very low probability in this example, for example, or very high probability in this example. So, and that can be the situation in 25 years. But what is the situation in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years? Is it going to be equal or exceeded this intensity? And we are putting together all the hazards on the matrix for comparability reasons, because that's important to prioritize what is more damaging, if you want, in a region compared with the other region. Is it from the landslides? Is it from coastal flood? Is it from river flood? This is our risk analysis model. Okay, I don't know. Now we go to the disaster loss and damage model. This is another type of data that is trying to provide inputs in arriving to those economic impact, direct modeling of potential impacts. We are focusing on gathering data from open source for now, from European level, and we are creating a coherent database coming from different sources. And we focus on losses from economic losses. We are focusing on damages of the typology economic losses, human losses, or non-economic number of buildings or area affected. As I was saying, these are coming from different sources. We put them in a database. We did a lot of work to get them homogenized and get them comparable, actually, these different sources. And we also aggregate this data in various products. One of them is Sendai indicators. We present also trends. We present also ranking and spatial variability across Europe. We support the impacts from the past events with satellitary images. We have colleagues in GRC and research institutions that are collaborating with, that they are presenting the actual impact areas with Copernicus or with the MODIS products from forest fires. In this case, this is Copernicus. So we try to get to that level of local level also when we look at the past events, past impacts. The next types of data that can be easily used to link policy scale with the local implementation, with the local, let's say, drivers of risk, it's represented by data from research programs. On the Risk Data Hub, we have the possibility to store data that are outcomes of different projects across Europe. We have presented here 2 examples, SETA4, which is a European project on considering climate change scenarios, and a local project, which is New Frame, which was a local project on risk assessment in the city of Monza from floods. This data is available on the Risk Data Hub, can be downloaded, can be accessible, because this is what we try to do, to bring the scientific work up and to have it used at the level of policies, level of decision makers, either through formulation and also through as input for the implementation of those policies. The one aspect is that this data can be uploaded on the Risk Data Hub, can be made available for other user to see, or can be only managed by the uploader there in their corner, and it's under a username and a password. In this case, this is not available, for example, but this one from SETA4 we cannot download it from the Risk Data Hub. Another type of data that we are really pushing for before. It's with the example that I just presented before, we try to we induce the needs of measuring of exposure, measuring of risk, measuring of vulnerabilities at some national level. We are also aware that this data, that even if it's done, it cannot be cannot be put together, cannot be stored in a proper way. So we have created this this corner on the risk data hub where national institutions, national collaboration networks can store data on the risk data hub. So far, our success was only in study cases. So we have some data from Genoa, from Romania, from Austria, that they are stored on the risk data hub. We have been contacted by many others to store some data on the platform. For example, Slovakia have a huge database of lost and damaged data, and they wanted to store it somewhere. Collaboration with ZAMG in Austria produced more than 10,000 impact events. Now they are assessing with their networks to see if this data will be available on the risk data hub or not. Anyway, as I'm saying here, this platform, it's all about collaboration. And it's all about and inputs, scientific, methodological, or even only data from various levels, not only geographical. So I arrived to this conclusion. Of course, we're putting here a lot of disaster risk data on the platform, but it was noticed that it has to have a harmonized way of doing this. They are coming from different, they say, supporting different policies, coming from different actions, from different hazards, multi-scale, multi-hazard, multi-sectors. They try to, so it really needs some kind of harmonization and standardization of the way we treat this data in order to talk the same language. So this data hub appeared in the EU adaptation, climate change adaptation strategy as the platform at the European level where data, or the platform that should in a way that can apply in a harmonized program. We collaborate with different DGs to this effort of harmonized platform and to present some standardized way of treatment. We will ongoing work. We'll see what will happen. A part of this we should just one step more in order to link this policy scale, global policy scale, to the local needs. But we also present data management. We can allow there with a lot of data, a lot of data sets which are more or less authoritative if you want. We present here research, scientific research to back up and support various actions at the European level. And as I started the presentation, it all has to be accurate, and we have to focus on the relevancy of the data that we store here. And as I was saying there, relevant data is the data that leads you to the drivers of risk. This is we are holding on this one when you try to say drivers of risk. We have to link the data to drivers of risk. We have to, because these ones are managed and these ones are going to reduce the risk. That's my presentation. I don't know if I...
Thank you very much, Tiberio. Quite comprehensive and complete presentation of very recent updates because we are aware during the implementation of the ESPON-TITAN project, we've been following and with close interaction with Tiberio and his team, and what is being presented today is quite recent updates on the information and data available. So thank you very much. I think you've been touching issues which were mentioned in the policy recommendations of TITAN related to harmonization, related to authoritative data, related to the need of collaboration. So many of the aspects that were included as challenges and policy recommendations in ESPON Titan are being currently addressed through this disaster risk management knowledge center and the risk data hub. As a matter of fact, we expect to make available ESPON Titan results in the risk data hub, and well, we will have to talk about that. Okay.
There is place on the risk data hub for it.
We have used our own corner at the risk data hub, as a matter of fact, accessing some of your data, etc. But I think that the project output, and this is something to be agreed with the ESPON coordination unit also, but I think that is worth they're available there. Without further delay, the two other presentations, to be honest, it's so hard to control the timing in a short session online, because if you do it face-to-face, it's easier to call the attention of the speaker and therefore to try to manage the time. Okay, we have half an hour to go. I would like to have some time for cross reactions among the presentations and the challenges we are talking about today. Let's see if Blanca and Francisco could manage to shorten the presentations and make it straight to the point. Let's see. Blanca, I didn't mention before that on top of being the Slovenian member of the ESPON MC, you have also a trajectory in territorial cooperation and cross-border cooperation, which is also part of the point of view that you can bring in. So please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon to everybody. Okay, so let me try to be brief. As you said,
Blanca, if I can shortly interrupt you, could you make it full screen mode?
I did it, but unfortunately
I see that you are still, your cursor, if you go the top bottom right corner, yes.
I have it full screen on my computer. Is that better? No.
No.
Sorry. I don't.
It's. Yeah. Well, then I guess yeah, you can carry on.
Yeah. Go ahead and yeah.
Sorry, I made it, but I don't know why. Okay, as you said, I mean, I work also in the Alpine Convention framework and EU strategy for Alpine region. I'm far away from being an expert in natural disasters or natural hazards, but I will try to show this governance framework and some activities that have been done within this framework, and I will comment also on some specific issues Carolina outlined. As Alpine area, as mentioned already, has been also the case study in this particular project, and you know that it is about the Alpine Arc mountain areas, which is quite sensitive for climate change and all other different types of challenges, including demographic and economic globalization and so on. It's worth, of course, mentioning that sustainable and effective protection from natural hazards is a precondition for settling, but also for economic running of economic activities. Here's a long-lasting cooperation within this area, and just to mention Alpine Convention, which I will present a little bit more in the after this, and 8 countries that are collaborating in this field, and they also sign international treaty, international contract for sustainable, for protection and sustainable development. But this is the convention since 1995, and the work is going on in this framework for nearly 30 years. But then in 2015, we, on the basis of EU Council endorsement, EU strategy has been settled, and the collaboration also extended from the core area to the lower lying areas, which are, of course, very much connected to. There is a mutual connection and interdependence, and between urban, lowland, urban, more urbanized area and mountainous areas. We also have a European Territorial Cooperation Program that covers nearly the whole macro-regional area. So through this, we can also have a good support for transnational activities. Natural hazards are a theme of both frameworks. Within Alpine Convention, we have a platform, a working body on natural hazards, and also in the macro-regional strategy, we have a risk governance action group, it's called 8. A few words on the Alpine Convention. It also only have 4 million inhabitants, but being very attractive and appealing for many people. We have a lot of tourism here, visitors here in all seasons, and the area is particularly vulnerable because the climate change and the increase of average air temperature is increased nearly to 2 degrees Celsius. This natural hazard platforms I wanted to show a little bit is working is from 2004 and mainly
Blanca,
on. Sorry
to interrupt you again. I think you are not switching the slides because.
I am sorry.
You are okay. I don't see. I see just the second slide.
Okay, let me.
And yes, now I see the slide on the platform.
Now it's changing. Yes.
Okay, sorry. So this platform has mainly consists of experts from Alpine countries and regions, but so it was a very much efforts have been done in terms of exchanging experiences, seeing what can be done in a common way, preparing some kinds of harmonized approaches to assessment of natural hazards and so on. The latest report, the latest outcome result is a seventh State of the Alps report called Natural Hazard Risk Governance, and which includes also some pan-alpine maps. And we have not our natural hazards that are important, I would say, in the Alps are more or less connected to water, and these are floods, but also debris flows and avalanches. So these are the major, problems here in regards to nature hazards, which are, of course, example, theme to work on in the platform. But this platform also, the work also accelerated a little bit with establishment. Do you see the next slide? Alpine Climate Platform. Hello? Do you see the slide? No, sorry. So
now we see it. Now we see it. Sorry,
I will go like this. So the work was accelerated a little bit with the establishment of Alpine Climate Target System and platform, which is online platform. And the Alpine Climate Target System tackles 10 sectors. They are called sectors. Ecosystem and biodiversity sector, theme, energy, soil, mountain agriculture, mountain forests, natural hazards, transport, tourism, water, and maybe I forgot spatial planning, sorry. And for each of them, the pathways have been developed. And you see here on the map the natural hazard pathways, pathway, which has 3 pathways. One consists of Alpine-wide risk management plan, focusing on cross-border risks. The second pathway is Alpine-wide monitoring of permafrost and geomorphological processes. And the third one is support measures to enhance individual risk precautions. This has been further developed in the climate action plan with the specific tasks. I already mentioned wide risk management plan, mapping hazards hotspot for critical infrastructure, more transport, including transport, energy, and ICT infrastructures, but also settlements. Then to develop common framework for cross-border risk management, including methods, standards, recommendations, and tools. And I already mentioned this permafrost monitoring and other geographic morphological processes. It is important to have this because, or to monitor this because you know that melting of permafrost is causing many other problems, not only in the Alps but also outside the Alps in the adjacent areas. So I would like now briefly to go to comment a little bit on ESPON Titan project. I think it's great work has been done within the project, and especially because economic impacts. I mean, we are facing all the time with the economic impacts of natural hazards, but we are calculating, of course, them and on the national basis, which is okay. Which is important that you included also this indirect economic impacts. Although I can believe that it's very difficult to calculate them and together and to foresee what this can be, because, for example, in the Alps there has been a windstorm causing quite a great damage. But what is the problem there is not that we don't have measures, but we don't have people who can implement measures. So together with the demographic change, I mean, this indirect impacts can be even worse in specific parts of the territories, for example, our remote areas in the Alpine Arc. That's why I wanted to highlight territorial diversity, which is unique characteristic of Europe. And this means also that we have a very diverse and great diversity of natural hazards that happen in those different territories. And it can be said that for different territories, some natural hazards are more important than the others. So in this view, it is difficult to measure economic impacts and to make aggregated maps. I understand that on EU level this is interesting, but maybe if I look at maps that have been produced for the Alpine Arc, I mean, including in the EU maps of Espon Titan, I see that, for example, there's a great impact of in wind damages, wind hazards, and windstorms and floods. But calculating economic impacts of this makes it very low. So I have a little bit of doubts here how this can be aggregated in a common map. As regards the vulnerability analysis, I think this is quite a good way to do it. I mean, we have vulnerability, now I'm speaking from the national level, prescribed that the vulnerability analysis have to be done, have to be prepared for local level, for municipalities. But the problem is that municipalities have to do it, so they need to have an extra money for that. And then we need to have a data that is reliable, that is up to date, and that is that we can work, that is somehow, yes, reliable and at the proper level, detailed enough to show the real where the vulnerability can be spotted. As regards spatial planning, I mean, somebody said that quoted, I think Carolina quoted somebody that risk cannot be reduced to zero, but that's why we need to have prevention measures. I agree very much, and prevention is very important, and spatial planning is very often mentioning as the proper as a proper framework for this. But I think we are still far away from optimal use of spatial planning framework as being a prevention, something that we can be used for proper for this purpose, for prevention measures. I mean, we can speak about this later on, but just to say that according to my experience also at national level, this is far away from being very, I mean, we use it, but due to some sectoral views and some sectoral normativizing their inputs, we cannot, how to say, negotiate what is feasible, what is still feasible, what is impossible, and so on. So, and that's why this makes a spatial planning framework less, how to say, usable that it could be. I also would like to comment on assessment, which has been mentioned within the recommendations to put in the strategic environmental assessment some of this to also look at through assessment on natural disasters and vulnerability. But I think that we cannot do everything through analysis or spatial planning. I think that many things have to be done through education and governance. When I spoke to some time ago in the EU SALP workshop on this issue, natural hazards, someone said, and that the problem is that not many people, I mean, it is not very good to have experience with natural disasters. This is could be trauma. But nevertheless, I mean, today people don't have experiences with natural disasters. And that means that they are not enough, how to say, alert. What does it mean? And they don't use this, they don't think of this when they act in space. So they usually they can put obstacles that can make an obstacles for the water to flow through the waterbed, because they are not aware that what this can cause. So also education, not only in school, but also with the public and so on, is very important. And I will stop here. I hope was not too long. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Blanca. Quite a nice summary of some of the challenges that have been addressed and commented by the Espon Titan project in the framework of those cross-border initiatives and policies that you were presenting. Let's go quick the last presentation, and let's see if we can have a final round of interventions for cross commenting, to say it somehow. So, Francisco, the floor is yours.
Okay, good afternoon to everybody. I'm going to share my screen. Can you see my presentation, the first slide?
Not yet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now
we see your desktop. So we see ourselves.
And you see the slide, green and white?
No.
My God. Let me see. Mm-hmm. Share.
Let me check if I can.
Are you letting me? Okay. Now, what do you see? The presentation, but without.
Now we see it. Now we see it. Thank you.
But without. I mean, only the. You see the presentation single, like in paper, not in a screen, no, not the whole screen. Okay. Anyway, shall I begin? Are you okay? You.
Sorry, I was muted. It's
Yes.
good enough, and go ahead.
Okay. Well, good afternoon. First of all, my name is Francisco Cobos. I work in the Andalusia government in the climate change office. We are one of the case study, and of course, thanks to ESPON and thanks to Tecnalia by considering us an interesting experience and for inviting us. We are, for one who doesn't know us, we are one of the biggest region in the European Union, bigger even than more than 10 or 12 countries, 87,000 square kilometers, and 8.5 million inhabitants. We have a almost federal government. So in things like agriculture, environment, or health, we have the responsibility in the regional government. Not water, because the water is national mainly, but this is the situation. So we do rule in this aspect. More than 20% of the surface is protected areas in different Nature 2000 figures, national park, natural park, and other small figures. About risk, we are a medium-high vulnerable area, according to ESPON or to AR5. Our region is, in all the maps that we have seen today, is dark. Also, in economic aspect, we have a high dependence from tourism, is between 14 and 18% of our economic output, and agriculture with a very high effort in ecological and organic agriculture that is growing faster than in any place in Europe, I think. The main hazards are droughts, earthquakes, floods, any variety of floods, river, sea, and rain, and the cold drop, something from the Mediterranean area, cold drop or katabatic wind. About the management, we have a territorial emergency plan and some smallest risk, a civil protection body with a very strong position. Agriculture has an interesting system of a joint venture with the insurance company called Agroseguro, where they assess the agricultural risk. We have a commission for catastrophes, and mainly the funding is coming from the Rural Development Program of Andalusia. So these are more or less the tools that we have in this for risk. About adaptation, there are two very special hits. 3 years ago, we passed the climate action law, a regional law with some measures about mitigation, adaptation, a system similar to European trade system of emission, but for smaller companies, and the addition of the Andalusia Climate Action Plan with an adaptation programs. That was the two main adaptation tools from the government, with a lot of obligation for companies, for people from the public sector. There are other actions like irrigation plans, adaptation for crops, indicators for agriculture and climate change, training program for farmers, and intense a big effort to improve the ecological agriculture. Is half of the production of Spain, and is growing. So the region is taking a lot of care about this. Energy and the control of erosion. About the input information, main of the three departments that we took, well, the spatial planning, they have the POTA, is the regional plan of about territory management, about land planning, and is the main plan about territory. There are a lot of plans, 17 subsectorial plans that are inside it with smaller region or sectors, and other plans must be coordinated with this, that is the leader. The impact about the spatial planning are river, pluvial and coast flood, wildfires, drought, landslide, and land erosion, especially the wildfires, those that are in wild areas very close to the cities, and there is a problem here in the region with very big houses and urban places with forest and with houses at the same time. The economic impact for the spatial planning are loss of forest, livestock and agricultural production, and tourist industry. About agriculture, of course, the economic impacts are all job position, production cost in agriculture and livestock, decrease of the value of production, the increase of the cost of the insurance, more needs for investment, change in crops, and other of the objectives of the government is to fix the population in all the territory. In this, we think that we have a high level of performance, but there is a risk, a high risk to lose people in the territory and the population of the rural areas. Also we have responsibilities in agriculture, in the regional scope. And the impact, the same, drought, torrential and persistent rain, floods, hail, hailstone, frost, cold waves, plague and disease. Finally, the third department with more national competence is the hydrological management. When they talk about economic impacts, they talk about permanent infrastructures, roads, bridges and other public services, housing. All the information, all the planning is under the POTE, the land plan, the main land planning that I told you, and the main impact, again, the highest exposure to to river overflows, erosion, and cold drops. What have we learned with this Spontitan, with this project, is that it's essential to share information, the intervention of different bodies, different organizations. The so high and essential role of civil protection as an inter-administration body with technical expertise and multi-level, also relation among different bodies and different level, or local, regional, and national. We think we have an interesting job done with identification of risk areas and a little with identification of direct and indirect economic aspect. And it's the first time that we have done a so exhaustive analysis. So this is the best place, the strength. And about the weakness, we need more coordination among sector, among different level of government, more focus on prevention than it reparation and correction. That is important to invest in the previous steps before the troubles have come. In economic impact, there is a lot of job to do. And this is a very local problem. The sub-regional plan and the subsectorial plan must be integrated better in the risk management framework. So any policy with economic impact, with social impact, must include the climate change perspective. And something very specific, it does flood assessment, only use the past information, not simulation, not forecast. The best information of this is thus the PACC, the Andalusia Climate Action Plan, has the same diagnosis. So it has been joining with the job that the Andalusia Plan was doing with this diagnosis from ESPON. So it has been very useful, and we are working almost in the same sense. The Andalusia Climate Action Plan, as I told you, is the main tool. It is right now being published, because we publish it is in a provisional way. People send in a participation way their changes or their questions, and now we have ready the definitive option. And it has 3 scopes: mitigation, adaptation, and communication, and is an obligation for the government. Is included in the climate change law, and as I have told you, have the same inspiration that the SPON weakness and the diagnosis of SPON. Even if you study this, it has 8 transversal lines: green taxes, green budgets, green public procurement, but the 3 last of them are related to the thing that we are seeing here: the generation of knowledge, cooperation, and institutional governance. And seeing it more specifically, cooperation talks about the works with other national and international projects, prospective, look for information, look for funding. The institutional governance is the same, but inside Andalusia. And something very special is the definition of local, municipal climate plans that must be coordinated by the regional government. So before we talk about coordination with other places, other regions, even Europe and Spain and the state, and institutional governance is inside departments, different departments, and local and regional. About the requirements, all the strategic lines must follow these principles: knowledge management, integration of the climate change in any information, and the territorial consideration. So consider this multi-level governance. And finally, I think I've been very fast. The next step are similar to the one that you have shown. We need to develop a framework for cooperation between different functions and different levels, different departments that are in ministries and different level of local, regional, national, and European level. There are a need to define, to study cause-effect relationship between disaster impact, social, economic impacts, to learn from good practice, of course, to focus on prevention more than in repair and more than reparation, and improve about the data framework collection. I think I just in time, very fast, but this is more or less our conclusion, and that has been very interesting. The most interesting thing is that the main tool that we have, but is the climate change law and the Andalusia climate action plan that has been edited, published right now, has a very interesting, has the same inspiration that the ESPON highlights, that the ESPON conclusion. So for us, it is very interesting, and we are going to work in the next step with this interesting experience.
Thank you very much, Francisco. Well, touching also on issues that we have previously commented, for example, the importance of indirect impacts in agriculture, how territorial and sectoral integration is crucial, governance and data issues. So well, more or less touching upon the same issues that we've been commenting. We are already over the time of the session. We have barely 5 bonus minutes to go. And I would like to make a round of especially the 3 levels. So Tiberio, Blanca, Francisco, one short pitch for closing with overall conclusions, your main takeaway messages from today on one hand. But before that, I would like to call the attention on the vulnerability issue. So is it crucial only the loss and damage information, the economic impact, or to which extent vulnerability matters, and therefore understanding the underpinning factors of vulnerability before even quantifying economic impacts is crucial or not in this data governance cooperation context that we are talking. So one final reflection about this, vulnerability matters, and your main takeaway message from today. We can follow the same order. Tiberio. Still muted. Now.
Yeah, but I cannot unmute. No, okay. I was not on. Someone blocked me there. Okay, vulnerability. Now, depending on the hazard, vulnerability can be associated with the attributes of the exposure, right? So really important, for example, taking as an example, river floods, and taking example as buildings, for example. So we get their attributes of those buildings are really important in the assessment of the risk. For the other, though, the systems are really important. So agricultural system, that applies to most of the climatological hazards. Those two, they might seem different, but they have the same answer. they have the same answer, which is measure them. We need to measure them at the level of the local level, as was presented in the two presentations afterwards. We need to measure those vulnerabilities, even if they might seem different from the very first local level. And as a conclusion, as a main conclusion for me, and it's what I was putting on the slides, collaborations. This is what we need, collaboration among institutions, creating of networks. This is what will help go further with methodologies, with science, with application of those methodologies in policies. And I think that's my need. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tiberio. Blanca, final pitch, vulnerability and main takeaway message.
Okay, about vulnerability, I think that this is very important exercise that has to be somehow bind to spatial planning. So that means if we have vulnerability maps and we understand what has been said, exposure, and what is left of this. For example, in the Alps, they are talking about residual risk. That means when you do everything what is possible, I mean, you are more expert than me, then you have to cope also with this. And I think for me is vulnerability key issue for the prevention, and which can be, of course, or should be a part of the spatial planning exercises and planning and collaboration, intersectoral cooperation. As a takeaway, I would say also, I mean, collaboration, yeah, but not only between sectors, as has been mentioned by some colleagues, but also between levels. And in transnational area is a little bit, difficult. It's a lot of collaboration, but it's the difference. Administrative systems are very different, and so it's sometimes very difficult to talk about harmonization. We have a comparable, data sets and so on. There are some obstacles to harmonize everything. So we should not go too much into this. We should better do something on the other fields that will bring us closer to harmonization. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. We need to conclude. Francisco, if you're able in 10 seconds to say something, go ahead. You're muted.
Just to say that vulnerability is here. We have tourism, we have extreme days, extreme weather days, and they are growing and growing, and our region is going to be less attractive for tourism. The crops are changing, the wine are changing, the kind of grapes that they use is here. That is.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you a lot.
We could very interesting complementary points of view, and well, I hope and expect that we will keep discussing about these challenges and promising future with all the initiatives that you're sharing. Thanks a lot, and enjoy the evening. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
we have today here the presentation of our toolbox, and we'll give you a very active and interactive discussion about some ESPON tools, we hope. So we start with a brief presentation of our toolbox. My name is Sandra Di Biagio. I work in ESPON since 2004, and I will share this session with 3 other colleagues from the ESPON EGTC. They will introduce themselves. It's Zintis, Martin, and Marian. So we ask you here to have an active participation in our workshop. We'll have some consultation with you. We'll also present our tools online. So we have 5 tools to make presentation and to see how they work online. And then I will pick up some of the provocative questions that Victor, our director, put in the morning session about who can be a territorial leader. So I think here what we'll try to show to you is that everyone can be a territorial leader with our ESPON tools. And this will be about presenting to you some facts, some evidence, some data to which you can analyze and interpret your own territory and see the position of your own region in the European context. This will be also to tell you about positive narratives, as Ana Seixas this morning, our Portuguese representative, told us about. This will be also to tell stories about our places and to share experiences. And of course, to connect territories. And for this, we need evidence. So we are here to show you more in detail our toolbox and to give you some appetizer to explore our tools. And this session will last until 5:30. We'll have a brief presentation of the toolbox, and I will just give the word to Zintis.
Thank you, Sandra. Good afternoon to everyone. I have to say, such a marathon of workshops today. I hope you can keep up with the speed. But anyhow, so my task is to introduce briefly the toolbox and some of the tools, and then later we go into details. My name is Zintis Hermanssons, project expert at the EGTC, working on tools, but also on other things as well. So if I come back to the tools, I have to say that the ESPON online tools is one of the building blocks of the ESPON program. Via these tools, we offer interactive visualization and analysis of the ESPON research data, and also other data for policymakers and researchers. So if you go to our website and open tools and maps section, as you can see on the screen, you will end up in the ESPON toolbox. We call it a toolbox because it contains different tools grouped according to their purpose and specificity. So we don't have one super tool, right? All of these tools are somehow linked to some degree, but at the same time also independent. We will definitely aim for an integrated solution in the future, just to improve, the user experience and so on. However, I am happy to inform you that we have managed to deploy a bunch of completely new tools just recently. 5 of them are already in the toolbox. Some of them are in the making, and we are planning to have at least 8 tools in the toolbox by the end of this ESPON 2020 program. Perhaps you have come across some other ESPON tools, older tools. All of them have been archived with still some limited functionalities, because in most cases data was outdated, and it didn't make much sense to upgrade these tools because the technology has evolved. So here we are with a set of new online tools. Here you can see the landing page of these tools, and now I'll just briefly go through each of them, but just very briefly to kind of mention the essence of them. The next slide, Marian, please. So I'll start by the ESPON 2020 database portal, which is the backbone of the program, and we have improved also the interface. If you perhaps remember the previous portal. And in this database, we have project data, ESPON project data coming from the research, different spatial scales, touching upon different thematic fields. We also have time series. And what I need to mention is that this is a kind of a central repository for data. It feeds our online tools, and of course, it also feeds the other research. Yes, Marian, you can go on. ESPON Online Map Finder is a tool basically in which gathers different maps which have been produced in ESPON projects. So these maps you can search by project and theme, and all of them also provide short descriptions about what you can see in the map. Unfortunately, but this is still going to be improved. You will see there's some older maps, but we plan to improve and incorporate the set of all the new maps we have developed in the course of the past years. The next slide. The ESPON TIA tool, which is a territorial impact assessment tool, is in a way a tool with which you can do ex-ante territorial impact assessments. And what we do here at ESPON, we do these assessments for EU directives and EU level, let's say, legislative proposals. But the tool is also tailored in a way that you can do impact assessments at different territorial scales, let's say at a macro regional scale or a cross-border scale and so on. So in fact, anyone can use this tool and tailor to their needs. And this tool is fed by, of course, ESPON data, but also it contains a lot of other data which would be needed to carry out impact assessment. The next slide. ESPON Fora tool is a tool which is developed to analyze functional areas, functional urban areas and other areas. So in this tool, we have 9 types of predefined functional areas covering the whole Europe. And basically, this tool is meant, it has been developed to deal with the data shortages because many times we do not have data on functional areas. So this tool is actually providing estimates, right? And it helps to analyze time series data to benchmark different functional areas against each other. We deployed it recently, and hopefully it will help the policymakers in the territorial analysis. The next slide. Mrs. ESPON tool stands for a tool which deals with macro regions. And this tool, we have different modules covering macro regions. And if Marian, you go to the next slide, here you can see that basically it provides not only trends on these macro regions, but also a lot of policy context and indicators also associated with the strategies which are implemented in these macro regions. So it's not that much data tool, but also a tool which links very much to the political and policy context of these macro regions. The next slide, please. The SDG benchmarking tool is a tool we developed to benchmark the Sustainable Development Goals at a territorial level. That's a crucial thing to remember. There are different initiatives going on to monitor the SDG implementation, but I think this tool gives a wonderful opportunity to look at the territorial level and see to what extent the progress has been reached. Of course, to compare and benchmark as well. Next slide. The Richico tool is a tool which is not yet in the ESPON website, but soon to be there, is a tool which basically allows to compare regions in a multiple contexts. And in a way, it's a bit specific tool because the essence of this tool is not just some trend analysis and stuff like that, but it's really comparing regions with each other using some of even the techniques you would find in the GIS, let's say, types of analysis. So it's a very useful tool for comparing and benchmarking regions, and has its particular touch on specifically on this aspect. The next slide. The Actaria tool is also not on the website yet, but soon to be there. And this tool perhaps is a bit different from the other tools in a sense that it's meant to be as a drawing tool. And to explain it, it's a tool which can map soft territorial cooperation areas and initiatives and help people and organizations to collaborate from this perspective. So in this tool, what you actually can do, you can draw things. And if you go to the next slide, Marian, then you have an example of Luxembourg, where you can carry out the institutional mapping. And here's the example of labor, transport, and housing. And you have something we can call mapshot, a fancy, interesting drawing image, which can help people to better understand these cooperation areas and look at things from a bit different perspective, I would say. And I guess if there's an interest, we can explain this a bit more, and Sandra can do it. I think this is the end of this very short presentation. It was meant to be as a very brief summary, and now we'll be able to go a bit more into details, but based on your feedback. And here I give words to Martin, who will explain what we actually want from you.
Good afternoon, on also from my side. For the interactivity purposes, we will also ask your feedback in terms of which tools that we present you now more in detail, perhaps get you more interested in the subject and you would like to hear more. So for these purposes, we will have a poll later down the road. But just for the first poll, we would do a warm-up exercise. For those that have joined via Teams today, you can see that in the top section of the Teams, you can click on the S symbol, which will then open the Slido panel for you. And for those that have been joining from homes, you can use the browser or Slido app if you have it. Just go to slido.do and type in the event code, which is tools with a capital T, and you will see the first poll. So if you can see, we have listed a number of ESPAN tools for the first exercise, and we would like to know which ones you are familiar with from the selection that Sintis presented you just now. I will give maybe a couple of minutes for you to log in and to get familiar with the options, and then we can see just as a first warm-up exercise what the results are, because it's very interesting for us also to know. And later down the road, we will also ask you which tools you would like to explore in much more detail.
So in case you have any questions, you can also use the meeting chat in Teams, and we'll be glad to support you in the process, because your microphones are by default muted. So for the ones using Microsoft Teams, just put your questions in the chat. I think most of you now are ready for this first, let's say, consultation with us.
Okay, I think there are still some results coming in, so it's quite interesting to see. I will try to publish the results here. So once you send, you can see the results, and the most familiar tool is the ESPAN database, as it appears. Also the FURE, Mrs. ESPAN, and TIA tool are very familiar. And let's say one of the more recent tools, the SDG benchmarking tool, many of you have not yet seen or explored, but perhaps today is a wonderful opportunity to learn more about it. ESPAN Map Finder is a tool that we have carried on from the previous period, and this is a handy repository for accessing ESPAN maps from the reports. Okay, but I think this is a good first shot, and we can start with it.
Thank you very much, Martin. Thanks for all that participate. So now we have a bird's eye view on some selected tools. We are going to show them online. And this is just to give you an appetizer for you to further explore the tools. And then we'll have another consultation with you. So I will give the floor now to Martin. He will tell you more about the most familiar tool, as you mentioned, which is the ESPAN database.
Thank you, Sandra. I will just share my screen in a second. And so for the ESPAN database, we have been working on the database for at least 2 programs. There was an extensive work done in the 2013 program, and we carried on this exercise within this programming period. And just a month ago, we launched the second phase of the database portal development. And I hope also that some of you were part of the recent testing session that we had with the database, where we asked the feedback from our user in terms of functionalities that we could further enhance in order to make sure that the user experience for you would be the most optimal. As Sintis was already mentioning, this ESPAN database serves first and foremost as a repository of all the evidence that is gathered by our project, which we store in the database for the reuse purposes within our projects, but also for others that are interested in replicating what we do or repurpose what we do. The second key functionalities for the database is that is the central source for the new toolbox, meaning that all the other tools feed from the data that we have in the toolbox, so we don't need to upkeep several separate databases. It also allows quite interesting and useful functionalities, such as disseminating data via web services, so you can directly use the database in your GIS system or use in any of the web applications that you may be interested in developing. The database, the main section here, if you open the portal, you can first see some key statistics about how many data sets there are and what are the recent inputs and some coverage-related statistics. You can also then go and explore the data directly via themes. We have 12 themes, or you can explore the database via the menu options on the top. Main data, project archives, resources, and data upload. The data upload is meant for our projects or the people that we are working with that deal with the data collection and uploading. So that is restricted for that purposes. And there we have developed a specific system where you first declare the metadata, which will be checked by us, and then you get a customized template to fill in the indicators, and you submit it for further checking. And once everything is approved, this data will be available in the database, either through main data or project archives. Main data we try to keep concise, so most of the indicators that you can find there are standard nomenclature, so meaning either it's NUTS or LAU or certain standard city definitions. But if you have, for example, also in the project's flow data, we upload what we call via other data means that is non-standard, and this will be downloadable through the project archive, so you need to download the entire package. And why we did that is just to make the exploration easier for the user, because otherwise we will have the triple the size of the indicators what you can currently find under main data, and there will be a lot of replications, but for, let's say, smaller territorial scales and so on. If you are in the main data section, you can explore.
Martin, I think we have 1 minute more, then we just go to the other tools, and maybe if people need to see and want to see more than the bird's eye view on the database, we can show it, and you will be able to vote for your preference a little bit after. So Martin, could you please resume in 1 minute?
No, I think this is pretty much, I think, the first snapshot, the description of what you can do and what you can find there. And we can go into concrete examples later during the presentation if you are interested in doing so. And as always, feel free to write us an email if you are interested in specific questions. We can always help you. Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you, Martin. I mean, as you could see, this is really the backbone, let's say, of our toolbox. I mean, it's a tool that we have been putting online since the beginning of the program. And it's also like growing with the different project results, as Martin said, and linked to different ESPON tools. And now speaking about another ESPON tool with a completely different nature, but also very supportive in terms of reading the territory, understanding the diversity of our region. I'll give the floor to Marian and to briefly introduce herself and to tell us more about the SDG benchmarking tool. You are muted, Marian.
Yeah, but I lost my screen. Yes, thank you, Sandra. I'm a project expert also in the EGTC, and I was responsible for the project that developed the ESPON SDG benchmarking tool. In 2015, as you all might know, the UN adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And this agenda sets targets for 17 sustainable development goals with 169 concrete targets and 232 indicators. However, all these indicators are being measured at national level. And on the other hand, regions and cities are expected and recognized to play an important role in achieving these targets. So the ESPON Monitoring Committee asked us to develop also something with the SDGs, because we have, of course, within ESPON an enormous amount of regional data coming from the projects as well, and combine all these different elements. We decided to develop a tool that gives regional and national policymakers and citizens easy access to this large volume of regional indicators that are relevant for the SDGs. And the tool is a simple, intuitive, user-friendly tool that can provide answers to questions such as, is my region making progress towards achieving the SDG targets? And how does my region compare to other similar regions? Is it lagging behind, or is it leading in achieving the SDG tools? Here you see the main entry page of the tool, and you see also the 17 targets that are included, and the 17 SDGs that are included in the tool. And for example, if you simply click on one of the goals, let me see. simply clicking is not working. Yes, there it is. Then you come at the different page where you can see the main menu in the top of the screen, where the goal 7 of affordable and clean energy is selected. And this is the first step. The second step within this tool is to choose an indicator, because each of the goals has been the team that developed the tool was able to select 4 or 3 indicators to measure this goal. And then step 3 is selecting your region. So if you want to focus and benchmark your region, you can do this as well. And then step 4 is comparing the regions. So if I show you a little bit of this indicator, for example, share of renewable energy in households, in heating and cooling of buildings, then you can see the map that gives an impression of the status of all the NUTS2 regions, in this case, in Europe and the 4 or 5 partner states of the EU. And then you can select easily your region. And for example, we are here for Portugal, right? So you just click your region, and then you can see Lisboa is there. And then it shows you, if it shows up, the map again with the region that you selected indicated here below. But you can also go down, and then you can see the 3 indicators that are being used within this goal, and the status of Lisboa indicated with a blue dot compared to all the other regions that are included in this map. And you can also see the progress over the periods, starting from 2011 till 2016, and we are able to include more updated data if this becomes available. And there is also the possibility to compare the region with similar regions, so that you focus more on regions that are similar to the region that you selected. But this I will explain later if you are interested in that after all the presentations of the tool, and if we go into more detail of the tool.
Thank you, Marian. Thank you very much. Very interesting. I think not only maps available, but also the infographics are very also interesting for this exercise of better understanding the relative position of the regions, and in visual terms, normally they have been very appreciated by the users of the tool. I take the opportunity that we have a question in the chat in relation to this tool that I kindly ask you to answer. So it says this SDG tool is only available for NUTS2 regions, right?
Yes, that's correct. Data is not so much available for the NUTS3 regions, and this is why we focused on the NUTS2 regions. And we are not developing data ourselves. We just gather it from different sources, and mainly from Eurostat, but they use very many different types of sources, but it's only NUTS2 at the moment.
Thank you, Marian. No. So for the ones that would like to continue putting questions in the chat, we'll try to come back later to that. And now I give the floor to Zintis to present us the Fuera tool.
Thank you, Sandra. Do you see the screen?
Yes.
With the Fuera tool? All right. I hope you can see the screen with the Fuera tool. Yes, so this tool, as I mentioned, is about functional areas. And if you just go here, just a bit down, here you can see all the 9 functional areas. And I need to say this, that we didn't come up with these areas within the project. So these are all predefined functional areas. taken either from the ESPON project, like it's a case, for instance, for border areas, or green infrastructure areas, or sparsely populated areas. And also we took some typologies from the Eurostat, which concerns functional urban areas, the coastal areas, which are part of the TERSET typology. Perhaps you are familiar with this. And also the maritime service areas, which also had typology coming from Eurostat. And the reason for this is to have, let's say, territories which can cover all ESPON space and which we can compare in a meaningful way, and which are actually comparable. Obviously, in your own countries, you can have other types of functional areas, and even better defined, right? Because this is the feedback we sometimes get when people look at this tool, that oh, in my country, delineations are different. But here the purpose was to have this European overview, and I hope this is still helpful. As I mentioned, the data here is based on estimations, 100% estimations. So, and the estimations are carried out by a methodology a bit complex in a way. And if you go here, there's an explanation how the data has been estimated, in what way. I don't want to go into detail about this right now. But if you just open one, let's say, as an example, functional urban areas. So the way the tool is structured, that on the left side you have different teams grouped accordingly. There's data on demographics, on economy, education, employment, energy, R&D, society, and something we call user uploaded, but I'll explain this in a second. And then you just go choose your indicator from the selection, and the map is displayed along with some other tools which you can use for benchmarking data. Sorry, this is coming up a bit slow, but it will come up. One distinct advantage about this tool is that we have a set of predefined indicators here in this tool, but you can also estimate your own indicators. If, say, you have an indicator on a NUTS level, and you want to disaggregate this indicator at the functional area scale, so you can use this tool. There's a separate module where you enter, which is by registration, and you can use the methodology developed in this project and estimate your own data.
So, Zintis, don't say everything now. We keep it for the next consultation. And if you want to know more about this tool, you need to tell us, because we have also prepared other session to go more into detail on that if you wish to. So thanks a lot, Zintis.
Thank you.
Very interesting, as you could see, very different tools we have on our toolbox. And we'll continue now with this bird's eye view. And I will ask Marian to introduce us very briefly to the Regisco tool. That is a tool that indeed came up also from the previous program period, but that we rename. And I'm sure you will find it also very useful and interesting in this benchmarking purposes.
Yes, thank you, Sandra. The Regisco tool is indeed a follower from the ESPON Hyper Atlas that has first been developed as a computer standalone application within the ESPON 2006 program, so 2 programs before. It's currently a very user-friendly web application that can support policymakers in analyzing and comparing their regions, in finding insights in disparities and similarities, and also finding which regions are catching up and which are staying behind, using methods such as the multiscalar analysis and spatial statistics. And because the HyperAtlas is not really an atlas, we decided to rename the tool into the Regisco tool. It's comparing regions in multiple contexts. And this is the homepage of the tool. We have Stephanie has really developed a very nice video that you can watch where she explains all the different functionalities within the tool. So if you want to know more, you can go into that one as well. And else you can just start the tool. And this is the main screen. Here you can do everything. The first step is to highlight specific areas of interest. For example, we are here in Portugal, but it's not listed here. There is a number of predefined areas of interest, like all the Interreg programs and the EU strategies as well. And if your region is not there, you can just click on the plus and go to Portugal in our case, and then you can add it. Oh, first here add, and then I leave it like this for the moment, and then you have here Portugal indicated in the map. I leave this a little bit the same. So you set a mapping frame, the wider scope of the analysis that you want to do. You set a regional data level, NUTS 3 or NUTS 2 or NUTS 0, and we leave it at the moment at NUTS 3. And then you have to indicate which of the 3 levels that are used within this tool, how you want to analyze this. And then there's the large scale perspective, which we, in this case, leave at the Europe +5. We have a mesos perspective, which is a bit in the middle, and you can, for example, set it at NUTS 0, which is the country level. And then you have the neighboring perspective. This is more close around the region that you are in. And then the second step is to select indicators. We have some predefined indicators that are included here. And then we can, for example, select the share of human resources, which doesn't work because it's not in NUTS 3. So you can only select here the NUTS 3 indicators, for example, hospital beds. And then you can select quite a number of different years. And then you can show the denominator, which is in this case, well, we go to a lower, I think I selected the wrong one. Disposable income. This is great. Denominator and the ratio, because the HyperAtlas also most of the time works with ratios. So there you need a nominator and a denominator, which you can then see over there. Which doesn't work out today.
Maybe it's the connection, Marian. But here I think it's very important to say that you can see the position of your region according to your neighbors, according to maybe your national context, and then according to your European context. And then you can see that in all one map, for instance.
Yeah, here, for example, I now selected the share of human resources. You can see the large scale perspective, the mesoscale perspective. So this is within the countries, and then you see a completely different map where you can see the regions ranking the highest and the lowest within the country. And you can see the neighboring perspective, which can be close to you in different ways that you can select. And then there is also an advanced mode with more statistical analysis that are possible. And if you want to know more about that.
Later, maybe. If you would like to see more, we can explore that later.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, as you can see, we have very much in our mindset this European context. I mean, we are a program that addresses like the EU countries plus the partner states, and of course this is always in our minds. So we zoom out a little bit from each individual region and try to provide you with information on the diversity. And with this information, you can zoom in again, and we help you to create positive narratives. As we discussed earlier, in the session today. And we can also share experiences. So you see your peers and you see regions that more or less perform similar to yours in the European context. And this can be also very useful for territorial analysis and for policy decision making. But I go back to the chat very quickly, and there is an interesting question to ask about the reliability and in statistical terms, and about if we can use and perform comparisons and describe how reliable are the conclusions. And we can use them with responsibility with EU. I will give the floor to my colleagues that already present the tools on that. But before, remember what I said at the beginning. With our ESPON evidence, you can be a territorial reader. And I think this is very important, and linking to the discussion in the morning, to become a territorial leader, which means, of course, this is reliable information, and when the estimates are done, this is also indicated. But I'll give the floor maybe to Martin first, has the backbone for the database.
Thank you. I was in the middle of actually writing this response to the chat. But indeed, I agree with you, Sandra, and mostly also, I mean, the project, the ESPON program is so big, and we can rarely take the opportunity to collect the data from the ground up. So, for example, do large-scale surveys or censuses or keep registers. So we mostly rely on external sources for our inputs, and then our projects do their magic. And oftentimes, what you find in the ESPON database. It is also the source data, but oftentimes it's also the result indicators. So that can be typologies, certain groupings of regions based on the development trends, certain indexes where we group several source data based on the methodology chosen by the researchers and agreed by the ESPON EGTC. So there is scientific accountability for sure built into that. So I think for EU policy design, monitoring, impact assessment, this data is reliable.
Thank you, Martin. I would say that also our methodologies and the metadata includes information on how the data and how the indicators were produced, collected, assembled. So you will be able exactly to trace from where and which source it comes from, or if it was made by our project. So, and we have different examples of the application of our evidence in policy making, and also in terms of data gathering and application for policy processes. So yes, I would say, of course, that we are very careful with that, because it's the ESPON program at the stake, and of course it's your own analysis that needs to be done in a way that is the most reliable possible. So I will now briefly introduce you to the Mrs. ESPON tool. Just to give you a short appetizer on this tool. And this is a tool recently put online, so not even, I would say, half a year ago. This came from a very important participatory approach with the 4 macro regions in Europe, the Baltic Sea, so they are here on the top, the Danube, the Adriatic and Alpine, and also with the European Commission. So there was a demand to set up a tool to help the macro regions to monitor territorial development trends that then could be useful to better understand their diversity, to benchmark and compare themselves, but also to establish priorities in terms of their work and to monitor, to support the monitoring of the implementation of the strategies. So all the 4 macro region strategies participate in development of this tool together with the Commission and the VASAP for the Baltic Sea. And we have created 4 models for each macro region and 1 European model. And this European model, we base it exactly on this concept of benchmarking. So here I cannot follow let's say the example of Marian and give an example for one of the macro regions in relation to Portugal, because Portugal is not participating in any of these macro regions, but I just pick up the European context. And here we follow the different priorities post-2020 in relation to cohesion policy. And we have the 5 priorities here listed. And for instance, if we click on Smart Europe, we have a set of indicators that were selected to give a characterization of the situation in relation to Smart Europe. And for instance, we have the position of the regions in relation to Smart Europe. And in this case, we have the GDP per capita between 2005 and 2015. So what we see here is that we see the position of different macro regions, but also individual regions in Europe. So we have the colors associated to each macro region. Then if you want to know a little bit more about the political context and background, we also have an explanation for you with the active links to the relevant documents and regulations at European level. But if you want to know more about the tool, so you will be will have the possibility now to tell us your preferences to further explore 1 or 2 of these 5 tools that we just presented. So I will give the floor to Martin, and in the meanwhile, I just tell you that our tools are continuous under development, so that they are not closed boxes. So we have continuous updating on the tools. I mean, the example, for instance, of the Mrs. Espon tool for macro regions mainly, we have web services connected with our database, but also with external sources like Eurostat and United Nations for some indicators. So each time an indicator is updated on the source, will be automatically updated on the tool. So, but I give the floor now to Martin for to know more about your preferences, about the tools that you would like to see a little bit more detail. And as I said, they are all online, or most of them are online. So you will have also the opportunity to explore them by yourselves. Martin.
Thank you, Sandra. Some of you already noticed that while Sandra was making the closing remarks, I opened the new poll as promised. So if you again click on the small S icon, if you are in Teams, or if you are following us through live stream, if you type into your browser slide.do and provide the code tools, you will reach a poll where we are asking you to indicate which 2 of the tools that you saw today presented you would like to know more about, so we can go more in depth. And currently we have 11 votes, as I can see. Once you vote, you can also see the progress bars in Teams. So please do indicate your preferences. We have 13. We will perhaps keep it open for a minute or so, so everybody can fill out their preferences. I'm just quickly checking what is the count. We have 56 people, so around 1/3 has provided the feedback. Let's see if we can get up to 30 responses. So just click on the S symbol in Teams, and next to the raise hand button on the top corner, and you can vote. Currently, the Regitco tool and the Fore tool are in the lead. So if you want to change this, please go ahead. We have 20 votes. We can do more.
So a little bit more. I think it's also good for us to to change a little bit a more active role in these sessions, that we stay far away from each other. I mean, we are the four of us in Luxembourg. I would say that most of you are in Portugal, so we can also connect ourselves through these more interactive opportunities to raise your preferences and to tell us what you would like to discover now in the next half an hour, that we can explain you about the tools and help you to read your territories much better, and also considering the European context. So how many votes we have now, Martin?
We have 21, so people are a little bit shy, or whether maybe they are also agreeing on with the outcome already. So I think we can then declare the Regico and the Fora tools as the ones that people are more interested in.
Thank you, Martin. I think probably because Mrs. Espon and the database come out to be the most familiar. So you have already explored their tools, and now you are curious about the ones that you don't know so well yet. So I will give the floor, I don't know, Marian first and Zintis after, to let us know a little bit more in detail about now Marian Regisco tool and how we can benchmark ourselves in the European context and to learn more about our territories and become a territorial reader.
Yes, thank you, Sandra. And thank you all for selecting the Regico tool as the first. Well, let me see. What I already explained to you that there is these three different perspectives that are important within this tool, and this was also clearly very well explained by Sandra as well. And let me see, we now focused on...
So I have a basic question, maybe also like if I produce a report, Marian, and I want to put all this in the report, has a nice map to see how my region stands up in the European context, I can very easily export this map, or how this works?
Yes, exporting is very easy. There is here in the upper part of the screen, you have different buttons, and here you can change settings. You can download the map and the data. And you can also share the map or the graphs with LinkedIn, Twitter, and also get a link so that you can share it with your own email or whatever. The screen is built up with a selection menu on the left. And here you can set the regional settings. You can also select indicators. I showed you the predefined indicators, but you can also make custom indicators. So you can you can select a nominator and a denominator manually. And of course, you have to take care that you make a sensible ratio that does say something. This is also why this is made. This is also why we included predefined indicators, so that you are sure that it at least makes sense. And with the custom-made indicators, you have to select the sensible ones yourself. I prepared a small example from the model report, because this tool is published together, or almost published together, with a leaflet and a guidance sheet, and also a model report where two different cases are explained. And for example, this case is about regional management in the Norrbottens in the north of Sweden. So if we can go to this region, we can select this region in the north of Sweden. We just go to Sweden, and we can go and select the region all the way. Let me see, it's in S33. Here you are. So we can add this, and then we just change the name. And then this region is selected in the north. Then if we set the mapping frame again on the total of Europe and the 5 additional countries, then we set the regional scale this time at NUTS 3. Now you see that the map is becoming gray again because the indicator that we selected, we have only available in NUTS 2 level. So in NUTS 3 level, it's not available. The large scale perspective is okay. And with the neighboring perspective, we can also take another type of measurement. We did contiguous, which is close to the region that is selected, or not selected, but close to the neighboring regions. But you can also look into an area around the regions that is less than 100 kilometers, or you can measure it in minutes. And this you can adjust as well with the settings. But let's say it's now less than 120 minutes, for example. And then we now have to select an indicator that makes sense. And that has data in this case. So, for example, we want to look into the region is a bordering region in Norway and Finland. And the region has a strong wood processing industry. And they have a productive forest that covers 24% of its territory. And the regional management want to develop this strategy for strengthening the forest and protect it against the negative climate change impact. And to inform themselves, they are interested to arrange meetings and discuss and learn from other similar regions. And therefore, they use this tool to investigate which regions in Europe are also densely forested in the country. And so then we have to select the territorial structure, select the indicator, which is then forest areas. And then we do the same for the denominator, also territorial structure, but then we take total land area in hectares. And then we take a year for total land area. We have it available in 2019, but for forest area, the highest year available is 2018. So we select for total land area, we also select 2018 so that it is comparable. And then you can make the visualizations. For example, the ratio maps. Let's do that in first instance. And here you can see that Sweden is a highly highly forested area. And how does this work in the large scale perspective? And here you can see all the areas in Europe that compared to Europe are highly forested. But if you look it up and look into a national perspective, then you see that this region is not so highly forested compared to the regions in Sweden. And so this is quite a different picture that you then have. And if we then look, for example, in France, there we can see a number of regions that are highly dense, highly forested compared to the other regions in France. So it might be interesting to find a region here or here on the Polish border that could be useful to discuss how they approach this strategy building. We also have a combination of highly highlighting regions above average, and then we don't look only at the three perspectives separately, but in a combination. And here you can see The red regions are highly forested, not only on a large perspective, but also on a meso perspective and a neighboring perspective. And you can do it also the other way around, that you focus on the regions that are below average. And then this is also, again, with the three perspectives in focus. The bar graph shows, in this case, the number of regions as well that are highly forested. And you can also go and click on regions over here. And then you can see that the different values are indicated on the screen as well. If we go to the advanced mode, we can even see more possibilities. For example, a dual synthesis map where the meso perspective and the large scale perspective are combined. So this is a combination of two, and also here the graphs are indicated. So, but if you then go to the meso perspective, if you go back here, then from the national perspective of forested areas of Norrbotten and Eatons, it's again it's less than the other regions in the Midwest in Sweden. And well, this is an important result of the tool, that you can then find regions that are highly forested in their national perspective.
So it can be used in practice really in this perspective of benchmarking and comparing different contexts, and very quickly we get the let's say the picture in relation to the possible question we might put and how we see the relative position of a certain region, right? I would like to know, Marian, in relation to the data that is included here, is this directly connected with our database? Has a specific database?
It has a specific database, and it has but for all the data that is available, we have the user guide, which was on the previous, the main page, made available. And the user guide has a complete table with all the data that is there, indicating which years are available, which data gaps there are, because and where it is coming from. Most of the data is coming from Eurostat, but we also have data from the European Environmental Agency, GRC, also from ESPON Locate and SME project are also integrated in this. And there is a possibility to upload indicators in the tool, but this is only in the administrator module, for which you have to log in, and then you can download data from the ESPON database and put it in the database that is available here, because it is it's considered to be a bit more safe that the data is actually in the tool itself. So that you are not depending on a link with the ESPON database, and then if the database is being updated or there is something with that, then the other tools don't work as well. So the link made with the data in the database is done via the administrator module. And this is done in the same way, for example, the TIA tool. This is a similar way as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Marian. I think it's important that we emphasize again the fact that the data that we are using in our tools is as much as possible and has it's available coming from official data sources. And the ones that are estimated, we have a very comprehensive metadata documentation to explain how these estimates were done, and were done in, let's say, in scientific methodology developed by the different project teams and then validated also in-house and by our database project. And then on the top of that, I would like to say that we also use some, let's say, innovative ways of creating data and experiences like big data collection, and to try to relate it and to compare it with more authoritative data. So we have different experiences in our tools. This workshop, we will not be able for sure to explain you everything, but we hope to open you a little bit appetite to go through our website and to send us an email in case you need any help or support, and we'll be very glad to explore it together with you.
One thing that I want to add is that there is also the possibility to upload your own indicators and data if you have this. And this goes with this button, and here you can download, import it from the ESPON database, but also from an external source, and then you can import an Excel file with the data that you have developed yourself. Of course, it has to be linked to the NUTS version that is included in the tool, but this is all explained in the user guide.
Yeah. Thank you, Marianne. So before we go to, because there is a question on SGG tool, maybe Marianne can have a look at the chat while Zintis will tell us more about the fuller tool.
Thank you, Sandra. Let me share my screen.
So here we can start looking at the different regional typologies, right? That we are more used also to sometimes create analysis and to see how the different territories develop, which trends and what are the differences and what comparisons can be done, right, Cintis?
Yeah, well, I hope you see my screen.
Yes.
Given that there is not that much time left for this workshop, and I think there are very interesting comments coming from the chat, I don't want to spend too much time here. Maybe just some basic things and some basic functionalities you can find in this tool. The first one, what I want to draw to your attention to is that we have these 9 predefined function areas, and if you go down and press on delineation methods. So here for each of the functional areas, we have an explanation and also a graphical kind of summary in a map, explanation of how these functional areas have been created. I mean, what kind of methodology is behind it, and so on. So you can find detailed information here. Then. When it comes to estimations, and this is very interesting, the issue which was, I think, brought up by Maria. I also need to show you kind of a brief summary of how the estimations are done. And we have like a screenshot here from the project. And basically what we do here is this, that we take NUTS level indicators from the ESPON portal, ESPON 2020 portal, and we disaggregate them at the functional area scale, and this aggregation process is done by the help of different data sets. And here we use, for instance, European settlement map, Korean land cover, and of course the grid data and other types of data. And once we have this aggregated data, we aggregate it back to the functional area scale. So it's in terms of computation, it's quite lengthy process, but this is not something new. I mean, this type of estimates have been done also in other cases, and behind this is what we call asymmetric mapping. This is something which you can find in GIS tools, but specifically for this project, we inspired from the GRC, Joint Research Center research, which did these kind of estimates for the population data. And of course, then one can ask, okay, to what extent I can rely on this data? It's all comes back to, of course, to the methodology. and if you can understand what has been done. And here in the tool, what we say that these are estimates, and whenever there is actual data from the official sources, for instance, from Eurostat, in many cases, for instance, for functional urban areas, you have urban audit data, and if there is data, then you should use the official data, not this data. But in many cases, there's a lack of data. There breaks the time series, or there's no data at all. So in this sense, this tool comes in handy to help you out. So to show a bit of functionalities, and perhaps the last thing is I talked about the disaggregation where you can disaggregate your own data. So there's a button of custom disaggregation tool. When you click on this, it will ask you to put your username and password. This you can get from us, from Espon. And then when you log in, there will be a separate module looking a bit more different from what you see in the website. And it will provide you basically steps how to disaggregate your own indicator, which needs to be at the NUTS level. Unfortunately, you won't be able to add your own functional areas. You have to work with the ones we have in the tool and analyzed in the project. So this kind of custom disaggregation we haven't used yet that much. And in fact, what we kind of foresee in the project is that if someone does this and is happy with the result, we can also publish this in the FOERA tool. And if I, let's say, go to functional urban areas, then here at the top you have a user uploaded. So we can upload also someone else's data as long as you feel comfortable and the data makes sense. Now, if I take as an example, perhaps an indicator and look a bit deeper on what you can do with it, I'll just for the sake of being in line with the kind of the theme of the Espon week, I'll go to energy, where we have only one indicator. It's on the primary energy consumption, and we know that what's important about this indicator, that we want efficient consumption. We want to reduce the consumption, right, in a longer term. And this has been also, of course, something which has been agreed at the European level. So here I have selected functional urban areas, and you can go over them and see them, the delineations, and the data is displayed here with the help of circles. Unfortunately, you can't change the color or switch to some other display mode. Let's say that you don't have circles, but you have something else. This is a kind of a bit predefined in the tool. Then from here, you can also, what you can do, you can choose different layers as a base. If you feel that that something like that would look better. So you have data on functional urban areas concerning the primary energy consumption. If I press here, then we also have some information on the legend, just to understand what the size of the circle tell us. Then on the right side, we have some small explanation, kind of let's say in a nutshell, what the indicator is about, sort of a small metadata information. And also some graphs on the time scale. So what you have in the tool here at the top, at the bottom, is a time scale with different years, and you can choose different years. So right now I have by default 2000. If I choose 2014, then a map comes up side by side. I can choose more years if I want. I can choose 3 or 4 years, and then analyze visually, the maps side by side. If that's helpful, I'll just unclick this just to speed up. And so here, what you can see here is a progress from 1990 up to 2000. And here you can see overall, if you take all functional years, you can see that the consumption has been decreased. But then If you go up, you have a time scale of 2014. So we selected 2014 as the end year. And here you can see the rise of primary energy consumption for all functional areas. Now, if I want to go deeper and analyze particular countries or regions, then here I have something we call a RAS filter. So a pop-up window comes up where I can select a country. Let me select Germany because I see a lot of circles in Germany. And then here in the map, I see only Germany here. And then what I can play around with the values, and I can kind of put my own benchmark. If I put it at a certain point, it will show only those circles here. Let's say, for instance, in the capital. Right. So yes, and here also on the right side, you will see the time, the kind of the trend of in terms of the time scale, and you can analyze that as well. So if I want to add another country, for instance, right, I can do this by again clicking here, and I can maybe let me select Portugal. Let's see if it works out. No, let me see something else, perhaps. Czech Republic. No. Well, I don't know, for some reason this is not working, but the idea here is that you can put more regions and countries and analyze them and benchmark them and see some trends and who is doing better and who is doing worse. Then, just for the sake of the time, I don't want to, because we're running out of time. We also have something we call data export. So all the data you will see behind the maps, you can also export in the common formats, and also you can download the map. There's a function to download maps as a PNGs to save for your presentations and so on. You see there's things loading, so I won't take more time. I think I'll stop here just to have some time for discussion. Well, thanks a lot for your attention, and thanks for selecting this tool. I was a bit surprised, to be honest.
Thanks, Zintis. I mean, as you could see, the tools that we present today, and in general our toolbox, the demand is coming very much related to the policy processes. So, I mean, of course, that we use the data from official statistics as much as possible, as much as they exist. But then the creation and the development of the tools is very much based on the demand that we receive. And this is related also with the policy processes that are on the table. So, I mean, we gave here several examples. We have, for instance, the SDG tool, we have the FORE, we have the macro-regional tool. So all these tools are very much aimed to support policy making and to provide policymakers and with evidence. And of course, as we discussed in the session in the morning, also to empower authorities at all geographical levels with information that could be useful to compare their territory in the European perspective. So this is the basic main set of our tools. There is a demand, and then we try to fill in this demand to develop the tool together with scientists and consultants that then could be used in practice for practitioners and policymakers. So maybe we give just 1 or 2 minutes if you would like to put some questions on the chat. And in the meanwhile, of course, we will highly recommend you to have a look at our toolbox that is online and to come back to us with your comments and your ideas, suggestions, and also to ask us for support in case you are interested in using it in practice and in testing it in your daily activities. We'll be very much willing to support you in this process. I don't know if Martin, Marian, or Zintis would like to have a final word or something in addition to what was already said here.
Yes, maybe there was a comment on that we have, or people have to be careful with using the tool, because but I think this counts for everything. You can do a lot of things, but you have to keep thinking of what you are doing, right? And this is the same as you using the Word and drafting a text. Then you also have to keep thinking about what you are writing. And with maps, this is the same. Although it's very tempting to do something and then you see a map and you like it and you print it, but yeah, it's an issue that of course is important, and people have to keep thinking about what they are doing and what does it mean what you see. It's not that if you have a nice map, it's true, right?
I think sometimes it's also to generate discussion. I mean, one of the tools is also to generate dialogue and to start the cooperation in different spheres and topics, and this can be just a starting point for that. And I think it's also important to emphasize the fact that, also linking with the session in the morning, that we are not only creating data indicators and maps, but we are producing narratives and analysis. So of course that it's very important when you use one of these tools and you export the information that this tool is creating, that you understand the context and what is behind it and how it was created, in order to have your own narrative that could fit into that. So I think we are all aiming here to have this sharing of experience, to benchmarking, which is a concept more and more important, but also to create this narrative, so stories about our regions and the comparison with other regions in Europe. And I think ESPON, since the start in 2002, have been doing a great effort on that field, and also on this perspective of storytelling, which is really very important. I would just say that the toolbox is a very dynamic thing that we have in-house. We'll continue developing. I mean, we just also give an appetizer to one additional tool that will be online in half a year. That is more a kind of dialogue and drawing tool, as Zintis mentioned. It's the ACT area tool. I mean, there will be also results from a project dealing with scenarios for the macro regions that will be probably integrated very soon into the Mrs. ESPON tool. So this is a continuous development process, and something that, again, is trying to fill in the demand that is on the ground for evidence, facts, and information. And ESPON, let's say, has his speciality on that too, and will continue trying as much as possible to be reliable and to provide evidence for policy making. So I would like to thank you all for your participation. I think it went very well and very interesting. I also learned a little bit more about our tools, and also your questions were very important to us. So continue to follow our ESPON Week tomorrow, and we wish you a very nice evening, and see you soon. Thank you.